The problem is in LA radio with people who were new is that if you didn't produce ratings within like 6 months, you were categorized into the toast category or soon to be toasted. So that's kind of where I was back in the day. But I have so many special memories.
Welcome once again to the Talking Archive. I'm Josh Jacobs, and our guest today is radio personality and singer-songwriter Kenny Noble Cortes. And here's how we started our conversation off, talking about a friend of his who lives in Glendale who's very famous.
One of my very favorite people, one of my first good friend in Southern California, going back to 1978, is Mike Sakellarides.
Oh, yeah.
Who lives in Glendale, and he has been there ever since, and he is probably... He should be on the city council or something, or the Chamber of Commerce, because he's such a promoter of Glendale.
Wow.
So anyway, I thought you'd like to know that.
Well, that'd be nice. So we need some new members on the Glendale City Council, actually productive, because we got a lot of rotten members right now. It's like, well, we got one guy who's a carpetbagger from Pasadena, and he's just like, ugh.
A carpetbagger.
Yeah.
I also had a friend of mine that I hired when I was program director at KFOX in Redondo Beach, and his name is Kevin, and Kevin lived in Pasadena, and I remember I actually visited his home. It was a number of years ago, but and he lived. What is it? I think it was right off of Ocean View. There's an Ocean View road or boulevard or street or something like that.
Yeah, there's an Ocean View in, I know there's one in Montrose. I'm not sure. Maybe there's one in Pasadena that goes all the way there. But I've heard that street before.
There is in Pasadena. And you could, and if it was a clear day, you could actually see the Pacific there in the Santa Monica area. So that was pretty cool.
Wow. So you were able to see the ocean from his house then, or?
Yeah.
Wow.
From Ocean View, I guess it's Boulevard or Ocean View. Yeah, you could see that from that street in Pasadena because it was high enough. You could look, you could look due west.
Wow.
And see the Pacific there in Pasadena. He lived right above the Rose Bowl. So
oh, wow.
I remember I went there over the I think it was the New Year's holiday, and we stayed at his house on New Year's Day. But you could because he said driving around here on this day is probably not a good thing because there'd be a lot of traffic.
Yeah, the Rose Parade, Rose Bowl, and also 4th of July.
Oh yeah, all of that. But we had a good time. We had a great time, and I didn't have to get out and drive, and he didn't have to go anywhere either. So we really enjoyed each other's company, and listen, you could hear the crowd noise from the Rose Bowl from his place. So that was one of my special memories of that particular area.
It must be nice living near the Rose Bowl in the sense that when the 4th of July is there, you don't have to actually go to the arena itself. You just can, be there, kind of like see the fireworks from your house in the luxury of your own home. And also you won't hear the car alarms go off as much either.
That's funny. And I think I had no experience with Pasadena, other than I knew that was the home of Channel 7's Dallas Rain.
Oh, wow.
Dallas lives in Pasadena. And so I knew that, and we had become friends when I lived there. I've touched base with him 2 or 3 times since I left Southern California, but he was just a great guy and a really good meteorologist as well. I really enjoyed him. And, of course, I don't know if you're old enough to recall that he replaced Dr. George when Dr. George passed away.
That's right. In fact, Dr. George, I got to meet him about 13 years ago at the Pacific Pioneer Broadcasters. And I saw him. He looked just the same as I remember him. he wasn't wearing a bow tie, but otherwise looked exactly the same. I was like, I was so enamored and just so mesmerized to meet him. I forgot to say, Dr. George, I can't believe you're not wearing a bow tie. But I said to him, hi, Dr. George. He's like, hi, how are you? Oh, good. I love your work. Oh, thank you very much. Can I get a picture? He's like, oh, sure. Would you look at that smile? And a friend of mine has the picture somewhere because he never got the film developed. But I wished I had that picture. But that was my moment with Dr. George, and he was the same person off air as he was on. In fact, Dallas just celebrated his 40th anniversary with ABC7, making it that he's been there twice as long as Dr. George was.
Well, this was 1978, and I think everybody certainly loved Dr. George in Southern California because he was such a character. And it's like the last thing he talked about was the weather. He talked about everything else but the weather. And he finally would get around to the weather, And it was never in meteorological terms necessarily.
No.
Although I remember the phrase "cut off low," Southern California, whoa, something like that. That I seem to recall about that. And he was really into cut off lows. It would bring rain to Southern California. But yeah, it brings back a lot of good memories.
And then he's like, and the barometer's 8.3. That's 400 millibars. And and then Jerry Dunphy will go,
you do a pretty good Dr. George impression. That's amazing.
You. And then Jerry Dunphy will go, oh, thank you, Dr. George. Now we got to get you back to the news.
That was back also when Jerry Dunphy was the old Cotton Top. Was the lead anchor at Channel 7, and I can't remember who was the bubble-headed bleach blonde.
Christine Lund, and she had the same hairstyle for years.
And she was actually, I want to say that was the person that Don Henley was referring to in that Eagles hit classic, "Dirty Laundry."
That's right. Yeah.
When he was talking about the bubble-headed bleach blonde, he was referring to Christine Lund. Oh, God.
Well, there was also rumor that the, what show was this? That Ted Knight's character, Ted Baxter, was modeled after maybe George Putnam.
WK, no, it wasn't WK. It was Mary Tyler Moore.
Mary Tyler Moore show, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
I've just been handed this late breaking news bulletin. It says you got a piece of roast beef caught between your teeth. Hi guys, I'm sorry, Leah. I was going to the bathroom.
Wow.
Mary, I want you to fill in this week when I'm gone on vacation. What about Ted? Oh, definitely not Ted. What do you mean, definitely not Ted? Oh, we were talking about pay cuts. We said definitely not Ted. All right.
Someone might get the impression that you were in radio or something.
I have.
Listening to your impressions, they're very good, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
They're very good. And they make me actually miss Southern California.
Thanks.
There was a lot of good going on back then. A lot of good things going on back then.
Oh yeah, I mean, you were in Southern California radio for many years, and I'd love to talk to you about that, especially because you were on several stations there in Southern California, and let's see, yeah.
That's right. I never could hold a job long enough at any of them.
bad program directors, or just
I'm telling you. I remember Neil Ross. Do you remember Neil Ross?
I know the name. I never met him.
He was the newsman at KZLA when I came to. Actually, at the time, it was KPOL-FM, and this was 1978. Mm-hmm. And he was the news guy who worked with Jim LaFawn, the late Jim LaFawn, who was the program director at KPOL-FM, which KPOL-FM became KZLA. And it was interesting because Jack Popejoy, the late Jack Popejoy, was the program director. And I remember one of the first things that he indoctrinated me into was the pronunciation of the call letters. And I remember going, what? And he goes, oh, yeah. We don't say them KPOL-FM. We say KPOL-FM. I'm like, okay. So that's what we did. We did KPOL-FM until the change to KZLA FM. But anyway, Neil Ross was the news guy, and he and Jim LaFawn did so many good bits together. But Neil Ross said, and this gets back to talking about gainful employment. He said, basically, if they'll just leave you alone for 2 years, you can build up an audience and you can make some ratings. But the problem is in LA radio with people who were new is that you didn't really get 2 years. If you didn't provide or show or produce ratings within like 6 months, you were categorized into the toast category, or soon to be toasted. So that's kind of where I was back in the day. But I have so many special memories of working with Mike and Jim LaFawn and Neil Ross and Jack Popejoy, and we were the staff. That was it. That was the staff. And Boyd R. Britton, who was the news person back then. We were this. That was it, and we did voice tracks. We did 3 hours live, followed by 3 hours of voice tracks, and that's how we ran the station 24/7. Friday was always crazy because we had to do voice tracks for the whole weekend. So that was getting studio time. You had to wait around a little bit, but still, it was an interesting way and an efficient way, I think, to run a radio station. It worked out pretty well.
And what was the format of KPOL? I read it was like a mellow rock format. It was like KNX-FM Mellow Rock 93, or how was it different from KNX-FM?
Well, we were like KNX-FM light.
Oh, okay.
Michael Sheehy was the program director at KNX-FM, and they had such an eclectic variety of music. It was just amazing. I had so much respect for Michael Sheehy, and one of the things that they did was what he did. It was actually him, and David Hall was the sidekick / news person there at KNX-FM. And one of the things that I think distinguished KNX-FM and Michael Sheehy as the program director was the fact that they segued songs in the same key. Unless there was a recorded bumper where they would put a recorded bumper, but after a couple of songs, they wouldn't change the key. So the segues were just amazing, and that was his expertise, was putting together eclectic soft album rock songs that matched in key and tempo if he could. And when it matched in key and tempo, it was seamless. It was just like wow. But only radio people would recognize that. The regular listener would just be it would be ear candy listening to KNX-FM. KZLA was like that, but we didn't do the whole key matching thing. But we definitely were competitive. I think pretty much KNX-FM, which was owned by CBS at the time, was pretty much always ahead of us in the ratings. But we were close. We were close. We just didn't sound as clean and as incredibly professionally programmed as KNX-FM did. But yeah, I would say we were. So that's why I say we were a KNX-FM light. But we did okay. We did okay, but apparently not good enough. Owned by Capital City, was that?
Yeah.
Owned by Capital City, and they demanded results, like the line in Ghostbusters when what was it when Dan Aykroyd was talking to Bill Murray, and they were lamenting the fact that they had just been fired from the university, And Dan Aykroyd said, I worked in the real world. They expect results. So that line has always stuck with me. And that's kind of what capital city management was like. They needed results and needed fast results. And so that's when I left the station, not necessarily voluntarily, in 1979. And life began to get kind of crazy after that for me and my family.
Now, it's interesting you said the KPOL reminds me of the WNBC. We're in conversation with radio personality and singer-songwriter Kenny Noble Cortes. He's also the author of the book Culture Jock, 1 Foot in the World, 1 Foot in the Church. You can buy the book at culturejock.net. That's culturejock.net. And next time we'll find out whether or not KPOL was influenced and inspired by WNBC.